If your surname is on this list, you are not just Irish by heritage, and you are not just Scottish either. You are connected to a specific stretch of borderland that belonged to no country at all, a specific forced resettlement, a specific ship out of Belfast or Derry, and in most cases, a specific family that arrived in America, found the good land already taken, and walked straight into the mountains rather than ask anyone's permission. 12 surnames, 12 bloodlines, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly where yours stands in the migration that shaped the American frontier more than any other. Stay until number 1, because that name was outlawed by a king, hanged in batches, banished across the sea, and 900 years later, it was the first name spoken from the surface of the moon. Number 12, Boyd. From the Gaelic, likely tied to the Isle of Bute, Bod, the island in the Firth of Clyde. The Boyds were an old Ayrshire family, and they went to Ulster in the Great Plantation. And this is where the story has to start, because almost nobody in America understands it. In 1609, King James I began the Plantation of Ulster, the systematic settling of lowland Scots and English onto Irish land, confiscated from Gaelic chieftains. It was, by contemporary description, the most ambitious plan of colonization devised in Western Europe. Scots poured across 12 miles of water into Antrim, Down, Tyrone, Donegal, Fermanagh. They stayed for a century, and they never became Irish, and they were never English, and that unresolved condition is the whole key to everything that followed. If your name is Boyd, your bloodline was moved onto somebody else's land by a king, and 100 years later moved again. The next surname belongs to 4 brothers who stepped off a ship in Philadelphia in the 1720s and walked into the woods. Number 11. Craig. From the Gaelic Creag, the rock, the crag, a name that means exactly what it sounds like. 4 Craig brothers, William, Daniel, James, and Thomas, arrived in Philadelphia in the early 1720s with their families and 3 unmarried sisters, and pushed out to the frontier on the forks of the Delaware. They were part of the first Great Wave, because in 1717, rents in Ulster began to spike as 100-year leases came due, harvests failed, and Presbyterians were legally penalized for not being Anglican. Roughly 5,000 Ulster Scots left in 1717 and 1718 alone. New England did not want them. Anglican Virginia did not want them. Pennsylvania took them, and Pennsylvania is where the whole thing began. If your name is Craig, your bloodline was named after a rock, and it landed in a colony that was the only door in America not shut in its face. Number 10 is a name you will find on a map of Pennsylvania a dozen times over, because they named the new country after the one they had just left. Number 10. Donegal, Derry, Cumberland, and the names they carried. Look at central Pennsylvania on a map. Carlisle, Cumberland, Donegal, Derry, Londonderry, Raphoe. These were not accidents. These people arrived and recreated Ulster in the woods, name by name, and they built in a specific pattern, settlements roughly 7 to 10 miles apart, because that was how far a family could ride to church and back on a Sunday. The Presbytery of Philadelphia had been founded in 1706 by an Ulster-born minister, and by 1717, the first American synod was established there. Church first, then town. If your name traces to those Pennsylvania towns, your bloodline planted the map of Ulster in American soil and measured out a country in the distance a horse could travel on the Sabbath. Number 9 sounds gentle. It is one of the great river names of the border, and its men were hanged 30 at a time. Number 9, Johnston. From the Old English, John's town, John's settlement. On the Anglo-Scottish border, that plain name meant something else entirely. It meant a kin network, hundreds of households across a valley, that would ride for you, because in the borderlands between roughly the 13th and early 17th centuries, there was no functioning law. You did not survive by being Scottish or English. You survived by being a Johnston, or an Armstrong, or an Elliot. Your surname was your nation. When James took both crowns in 1603, he moved immediately to destroy this. The first round of executions is recorded as sending Elliots, Armstrongs, and Johnstons to the gallows together. Peel Tower gates were melted into plowshares. Arms were banned. Horses were forbidden saddles. If your name is Johnston, your bloodline came from a place where your family name was the only law, and a king decided that could not be allowed to continue. Number 8 is the name of a family that was not merely pacified. It was deported, twice, and ruined on purpose. Number 8, Graham. From the Old English, tied to Grantham, the Grey Homestead, or the Gravel Homestead. The Grahams of Esk were among the most notorious riding families on the border, and when James pacified the Marches, the Grahams were shipped out. A servitor named Sir Ralph Sidley took the Grahams of Esk to a plantation in Roscommon, in Ireland, expecting them to take to the land. It was a disaster from the first day. The land had gone to waste. They had been forced to pay for their own resettlement, and most of that money went into Sidley's pocket. Their able-bodied kin had already been sent off to fight in the Low Countries. Meanwhile, the king had declared, in plain words, that the most notorious men of the Middle March were to be sent to Virginia. If your name is Graham, your bloodline was stripped, relocated, billed for its own removal, and shipped to 2 continents by an empire that just wanted it gone. Before we continue, if you are finding this useful, subscribe to Origins Decoded. Every week we uncover the history hidden inside surnames, bloodlines, and family names from across the world. Hit subscribe so you never miss one. The next surname suffered more in the pacification than almost any other, and there is a hard number attached to it. Number 7, Elliot. From an old given name, tied through French and Hebrew roots to Elias, but on the border it meant Liddesdale, and it meant trouble. The Elliots had fought in more than their share of every border battle, and they paid for it. 30 of their towers in Liddesdale were destroyed. By one account, a full third of all the borderers banished from Scotland were Elliots. They went to Fermanagh, in Ulster, in numbers, and many were transported to the Virginia plantations directly. The last major hanging of border reivers took place in 1609, and when the Elliots made one final raid into Tynedale in 1611, the world they had lived in for 400 years was already over. If your name is Elliot, your bloodline lost a country, a way of life, and 30 castles in a single generation, and boarded a ship because there was nothing left standing to stay for. Number 6 is a name that could not be more plainly what it is, the strong arm, and it does not stop where you think it stops. Number 6, Armstrong. From the Middle English, exactly as it reads, strong in the arm. The Armstrongs were possibly the most feared riding surname on the entire border. Hanged, banished, and burned out by James's pacification, they went to Ulster, where by the census of 1659, Armstrong is listed among the principal names of the settlement, most densely of all in Fermanagh. Then, over the following century, they went to America with everyone else. And here is where it ends up. When a man named Neil Armstrong stepped off a ladder onto the moon in 1969, the journey that began in the lawless valleys of Liddesdale had reached the furthest point any human journey has ever reached. If your name is Armstrong, your bloodline was hunted out of the borderlands as a criminal nation and walked, eventually, on another world. Number 5 carries a name that means the son of the pilgrim, and its people walked a road that is the actual spine of the American frontier. Patterson, and the families of the Great Wagon Road. From son of Patrick, the pilgrim's name. Once Pennsylvania filled, the Scots-Irish did not stop. They turned south, down the Great Wagon Road, through the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, into the Carolina Piedmont and back country, and over the ridges into the mountains. 5 great waves came out of Ulster between 1717 and 1775, in the late 1710s, the late 1720s, around 1740, the mid-1750s, and the enormous final surge from 1765 to 1775 that alone accounted for perhaps 2/3 of the whole. Something on the order of 250,000 people. The colonial establishment considered them proud, ungovernable, and combative, and would not have them as servants. So they went where nobody was governing anything. If your name is Patterson, your bloodline walked the wagon road, because every other road was closed. Number 4 is one of the most common surnames in Appalachia, and its people were placed on the frontier for a reason that nobody said out loud. Number 4. Campbell. From the Gaelic Campbell, the crooked mouth. The Campbells came through Ulster and into the back country in force, and here is the uncomfortable truth of the settlement pattern. The colonial governments were glad to see the Scots-Irish head west, because a line of hard, armed, self-reliant families strung along the mountains was a buffer. It absorbed the frontier violence that the coastal gentry did not want on their doorstep. These families were, in effect, a human wall placed between the settled colonies and everything beyond, and the wars on that frontier between 1750 and 1764 were savage in both directions. If your name is Campbell, your bloodline was welcomed onto the frontier precisely because someone else calculated it was better for your family to be standing there than theirs. Number 3 sounds like nothing at all. 2 syllables. It is on more American presidential lists than almost any other name in this video. Number 3. Jackson, Polk, Buchanan, and the presidential names. From son of Jack, Andrew Jackson's parents emigrated from County Antrim 2 years before he was born. James K. Polk descended from Ulster Pollocks, the name worn smooth in the crossing. James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, Chester Arthur, William McKinley, Woodrow Wilson. Roughly a third of all American presidents claim Scots-Irish descent, from a group that arrived poor, unwanted, and pushed to the edges. The frontier world of Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, and Daniel Boone was substantially a Scots-Irish world. Their fiddle tunes became old-time music, and old-time music became bluegrass and country. If your name is Jackson, your bloodline was the least welcome group in colonial America and ended up supplying its presidents, its frontiersmen, and its music. Number 2 is a name so common in the mountains that people assume it means nothing. It means the whole thing. Number 2. Bell, Nixon, Beatty, Irvine, Kerr, Crozier, and the riding surnames. Look at the 1659 census of the Ulster settlement, and the principal names come up in a row: Armstrong, Carruthers, Johnston, Elliott, Irvine, Graham, Nixon, Crozier, Bell, Kerr. Every one of them a border riding surname. And then look at a phone book in eastern Tennessee, or western North Carolina, or Kentucky. The same names, in the same clusters, 350 years later. The borderers were pragmatic people, and unlike the Gaels or the Normans, they were not much interested in lineage or in writing things down. Some historians think they let the memory go on purpose, because the reputation that preceded them was one they preferred their grandchildren not to inherit. If your name is Bell, or Nixon, or Kerr, your bloodline is one of the great forgotten histories of America, and it was forgotten deliberately, by your own ancestors. And now, number 1. This is not a single surname, it is the thing all of these names actually are, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it in any American mountain town. Number 1. The surname itself, as a nation. On the border, the word for a kin group was not clan. It was, literally, surname. A surname was dozens of households spread across a valley, bound by blood and marriage, and shared grudge, holding territory, waging war, cutting deals with whichever crown was convenient that year. James I called them a lawless people who would be Scottish when it suited and English when it suited. He crushed them and shipped them to Ulster, where their grandchildren farmed contested land among a hostile dispossessed population for 100 years. Then rents rose and the harvests failed, and they crossed an ocean, and found the coast full, and walked into mountains where once again there was no government, no law, and no protection except the people who shared your name. And so they did the only thing they had ever known how to do: self-reliance, kin loyalty, a bone-deep suspicion of distant authority, feuds that ran for generations, a willingness to fight that made them the tip of every frontier for 200 years, not because of the mountains, because of Liddesdale, 4 centuries earlier. If your name is on this list, your bloodline was forged in a place where the state had failed so completely that your family name became your only government, and it carried that fact across 2 countries and an ocean and put it into the foundation of America, where you can still hear it. 12 surnames, 12 bloodlines, 12 corridors leading back through a borderland with no law, a king's gallows, a plantation on confiscated Irish ground, 5 waves of ships out of Ulster, a wagon road down the spine of the Appalachians, and a mountain culture that the rest of America has spent 3 centuries misunderstanding. Your name is not just a name, it is a kin network, it is a border valley, it is a 100-year lease that came due, it is a decision made at a dock in Derry by someone who had run out of options. Drop your surname in the comments, and tell me which county in Ulster, or which valley in the mountains, your family came out of. And if your family kept the story, say it, because those stories deserve to be heard. If you made it to the end of this video, subscribe to Origins Decoded. Every week we go deeper into the history, hidden inside the names people carry, without knowing what they mean. The next video is already waiting for you,